Um, you know, I came in thinking one thing, and the debate has been rich and robust. What a different meeting this would have been if we were actually delivering this in a time for thoughtful debate by this body. Like, CASA would have been just celebrated as the first launch of a thoughtful and iterative process, which is what I kind of expected. Not the notion of you voted up or you voted down, you're either for housing or you're not. I mean, it's sort of embedded with this thing, like if we don't do this thing right this minute, that we're not really committed to this process. And I think a respectful process, if I had this thing about the three Ps, like a fourth P would be like a good public process, right? Like the process of having us really consider what our communities are saying, what stakeholders are saying, so that what CASA did was the best that they could do, and then you give it to the public bodies to take it the next level. And we wouldn't have been at this place without that incredible process. I like what Director Gibbons has put forward, because I'm really struggling with trying to understand how, if the horse is already out of the stable and things are moving, that our vote tonight is meaningful in any way. We're being told that that's already underway and that we really can't do anything about it anyway because it was outside of the public process. And so we're here to do what? Because we're not really debating it per se, which is what I would think that we'd want to do in the 101 cities and 9 counties, is to really think about what are we going to do together, whether or not what's coming from the state. When President Obama was blocked by doing police reforms, he put together the commission. They did the 21st century policing, and all of the communities that wanted to lift up those principles began to work in earnest without an act of Congress, right? And so CASA has delivered that to us for us to begin to debate without us taking an action here that might give the signal to various parties that we fully endorse what is there, even though the language says we're not endorsing it. It's sort of a weird sleight of hand. Well, if you're not endorsing it, what are you signing on to it for? If you want to accept it for consideration, why do you need to vote? Like, in that respect. Some of the things, there's so much in this to love, and there's so many people who worked on this that I have deep respect for, but because it's late, I'll just talk about the things that are missing for me in terms of feeling really confident about taking the vote tonight to authorize our chair to sign. I'm very concerned about the call for the regional housing thing because ABAG exists, and I think a new bureaucracy is crazy. The compact talks about the missing middle, but most of the incentives appear to be aligned at the outset, either to the extremely low or to the luxury. And I really just get a chagrin when it's like building for all, when luxury housing is kind of taking care of itself, but maintaining our middle income, our teachers and workers, those are people who are highly educated who don't really want to live in subsidized housing, right? We need to be incentivizing in the way that old FHA policy did, the creation and support of a middle class. We're silent on that. There's no mention of home ownership that stabilizes our communities, and even with the rent stabilization that's contemplated in here, we really don't talk about the ability for families to build equity to take care of the next generation. I think that there's absolutely no mention of housing quality. Several of the people who came and gave testimony tonight talked about black mold and all of these other things, and I know that as we're looking at preservation, it's not just preserving at a certain rent structure, but making sure that we're not keeping people in sick housing and housing that is unsafe. The lack of transit is of concern, but the biggest thing that I thought I'd really see had to do with really linking the jobs to the housing development. I mean, beyond what Livable Sustainables, that this group, Livable California, put forward in terms of jobs producers having to produce, I cut my teeth 20 years in affordable housing development in Richmond, California. And in Richmond, it was known as a company town because Chevron and Kaiser built housing for their workers. When you needed to take care of shipyards and you had shipyard workers, they built tract housing. And to come to this place where we're looking at highly capitalized corporations that are breaking trillion-dollar levels and billion-dollar level, multiple billions of dollars levels corporation, for the compact to not mention the need for them to take care of their workers, I think is a glaring omission. And to send that signal to Sacramento, I think, gives the wrong blueprint altogether. Because if we need something bold from Sacramento, it needs to be a statement that we expect the people who build their wealth on California's infrastructure of amazing universities, of creative genius that comes up in our soil, that they not pay that back in terms of making sure that we can house our generations, I think is irresponsible for the public body. So I don't want to vote CASA down. I want us to really debate it and amend it in a way that actually sends a signal to Sacramento as the debate goes on. And I understand this window of, it is not uncommon for us to come into a special session if we need to early February, if we really think that that February deadline is what we need. But to even come back at our next regular meeting, I think allows for an iterative process where we really are respecting the elected bodies that are here, and we are really talking about a region that will swallow the hard pills and say that we're going to do this together. And Director Hudson said we don't want to talk bad about, you know, the three actors here, but I think those actors in this room, in this body, with this framework, can really then go back to their own jurisdictions and say, you know what, but sitting in the room with our colleagues, these are the things that we need to take vote action on. And so I speak in support of Director Gibbons' motion, and I hope that that is what passes so that we can continue to do our work.